now denies the authenticity of that infamous Access Hollywood tape. The New York Times reports that the president has disavowed the tape's legitimacy, writing, he suggested to a senator earlier this year that it was not authentic and repeated that claim to an advisor more recently. This is part of President Trump doubling down on his support for Roy Moore. For weeks, congressional Republicans have distanced themselves from the Senate candidate in Alabama, but not Donald Trump. The New York Times reports Trump's reasons for sticking with Moore may be more personal than political. Quote, he sees the calls for Mr. Moore to step aside as a version of the response to the now infamous Access Hollywood tape. That, of course, was the 2005 tape unearthed during the election in which Trump was caught on hot mic boasting about being able to grope women. Let's listen again.
I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. Just I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the...
Well, that assertion would directly contradict Trump's own words in the hours after the tape was revealed last October. Here's what he had to say then.
I've said and done things I regret, and the words released today on this more than a decade-old video are one of them. Anyone who knows me knows these words don't reflect who I am. I said it, I was wrong, and I apologize.
And now he's saying he never said it. Today, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders wouldn't directly answer whether the president still accepts the authenticity of the tape, but said he hasn't changed his position.
The president addressed this. This was litigated and certainly answered during the election by the overwhelming support for the president. The fact that he's sitting here in the Oval Office today, he's made his position on that clear at that time, as have the American people in his support of him.
Anyway, over the weekend, the president reinforced his support for Moore by attacking his opponent, Democrat Doug Jones. The president went on Twitter. He wrote there, quote, the last thing we need in Alabama and the U.S. Senate is a Schumer-Pelosi puppet. He went on to add, Jones would be a disaster. In a second tweet, Trump wrote, I endorsed Luther Strange in the Alabama primary. He shot way up in the polls, but it wasn't enough. Can't let Schumer-Pelosi win this race. Liberal Jones would be bad. Well, 9 women have made accusations of sexual misconduct against Moore, most of whom were teenagers when the incidents occurred. And some say Moore pursued them for dates. One says he sexually abused her when she was 14. Moore has denied all the allegations, and President Trump has expressed skepticism about Moore's accusers. For more, I'm joined by Peter Baker, chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, Annie Linsky, national political reporter for the Boston Globe, and Eugene Robinson, a columnist with the Washington Post. Let me go back to the Times reporter, Peter Baker here. What is going on here? You guys are reporting that Trump is now denying there ever was such a tape that has no authenticity, which means, according to the, I'm looking it up on Webster's, basically he's denying it's factual, that there is no real tape. What does he mean by that? There's no authenticity to that tape.
No, exactly. He seems to be suggesting that the thing is a fake, like everything else he says is a fake. Fake news media, fake reports, fake investigation, fake collusion with Russia, fake everything. And it just seems to be part of, this is a president who sort of sets his own reality. And he once he's decided on a version of events and a version of facts as he sees them, he tends to stick to them. What's surprising is he had already previously acknowledged the authenticity of this tape, so that then switch around and try to pretend or to convince himself or convince others that in fact it's not a real thing is a pretty big switch. You heard Sarah Sanders today. She really wasn't denying that he had switched his view on it. She tried to duck the question, but he's telling people in private that he doesn't think that the thing is real.
Well, Annie, he did it just like Peter said. What's her name? Sarah Sanders today said, well, he was elected, therefore, I guess what he said matters and it's okay. But looking up in Webster's authenticity, worthy of acceptance or belief as conforming to or based on fact. Now, there's a factual question here. Was there, in fact, him speaking on that bus in that Access Hollywood tape? Did that actually occur? Did we actually hear it? Or is it like Groucho Marx, we either believe him or believe his tape? I mean, yeah. What world do we live in here where a president can deny what's obviously manifestly a fact?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many pieces and bricks that hold that story up, that it was actually Donald Trump speaking. I mean, Billy Bush, his voice was also on that tape. He lost his job because of it. And Donald Trump apologized because of this. I mean, another thing to look up in Webster's is the word credibility, because, Chris, every time Donald Trump pulls one of these stunts, he does something much larger to his presidency, which is erode credibility. And that's something that a United States president and a leader of the free world really needs when push comes to shove and when he begins to ask Americans to do unpopular things. And I just, it's sort of like he is trying to create his own reality, but it's just not even slightly believable because he himself has acknowledged it before.
Too bizarre. Anyway, the Access Hollywood tape was not the first time audio surfaced of Trump bragging about his own inappropriate behavior toward women. In a 2005 interview with Howard Stern, of course, Trump talked about walking in on contestants at the Miss Universe, Miss USA, and Miss Universe pageants when he was owner of the franchise. Let's listen to his bragging here.
Well, I'll tell you the funniest is that I'll go backstage before a show. Yes. And everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And, no men are anywhere. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. I'm inspecting. Right. I want to make sure that like everything is good.
You're there.
Yeah, the dress. Is everyone okay? They're standing there with no clothes. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible-looking women. And so I sort of get away with things like that.
Well, over the course of the campaign, more than a dozen women, of course, accused Trump of sexual assault or misconduct. He calls the claims against him totally and absolutely false and attacked the women making the charges. Let's listen to him.
These people are horrible people. They're horrible, horrible liars. I have no idea who these women are. Have no idea. When you looked at that horrible woman last night, you said, I don't think so. All of these liars will be sued after the election is over.
Gene, I think we're in the midst of some funhouse mirrors here, or rather, I don't know what even to describe it as, because Trump brags about doing what he doesn't admit to doing relentlessly. And then he does. But the larger thing here is I want you to talk about this. It seems to me he actually is afraid right now. He's afraid that the sleaze of Roy Moore is going to slip off onto him. And therefore, he's determined, even as he defends him, he doesn't want to be accused of being like him. That seems to be what he's worried about this week or even today.
Well, with good reason he would worry about that, because obviously if he's going to defend Roy Moore as he has been doing, then people are going to look back to that more than a dozen women who have accused him of sexual misconduct. But so now with this, maybe it's not authentic. I mean, there are only two possibilities. He's lying. He's just plain out lying. Or there's some kind of dementia going on. I mean, the president, no, I'm serious, that if the president can convince himself that a tape which he has apologized for and acknowledged and apologized for is not authentic, if he can convince even himself of that, much less anybody else, you actually have to wonder about the president's mental condition. You really do.